Today, we will be going over every deck in the new Bleach card selection for Union Arena. So what is this? It's effectively a soft volume 3 because it will include 11 new playable cards and 1 AP. So basically what you get is for $25, you get a full set of 1 of each of these cards. So effectively, in order to have a full playset, you need to buy 4 copies of the binder. And usually this is ordered from Premium Bandai. For now, the ordering window is closed, but it is possible to maybe buy from your local game store if they have purchased copies of the binder. So we will be going over all the new cards that can be made with the 11 new cards from the new card selection. So for the first deck, we will be looking at the new updated green Bleach Kenpachi deck / Toshiro deck. And we'll be going over the new cards. So one of the first cards is the new Kenpachi. So this is a 4 cost 1 action point card that says reduce this card's required energy by 1 while in your hand. You play it is effectively only 3 energy, and this character is not affected by BP reducing abilities. So it won't be affected by purple cards that reduce its BP, nor cards like those found in the Roy Mustang deck. This card also says during your turn, if there's a character with 3,500 or more BP on your opponent's front line, this character gains 1,000 BP. So it would go up to 4,000 from 3,000 BP. And also this character generates 2 energy. So note that the reason why this character exists is to be able to allow you to play your raid 4 cost 1 action point Kenpachi, because this card notably gets a big bonus if this card is rated on a 4 energy card like the new Kenpachi. So what you get on top of the inherent impact 1 for the raid Kenpachi is that if the base character is a 4 energy like the one that you see here, it gains all of the abilities listed below, which is basically the ability to gain 1000 BP and damage 2 until the end of the turn. But also it allows this character that if this character leaves the field for whatever reason, you can discard a card from your hand to be able to leave the card underneath the base card on the field. And for this specific deck, we are playing the Kenpachi special instead of the Toshiro one. The main reason is that we are playing 20 targets for our special, which is the Kenpachis and the Yachirus, while we only have 14 Toshiros in our deck. So just for consistency purposes, we are playing the Kenpachi special. And we will be also getting a new Toshiro, so note that this is the new color trigger. So this will be replacing the old color trigger, which was effectively just a 3000 vanilla most of the time. And the new card says, for 3 energy 1 action point, when played draw a card, and also generates 2 energy with 2000 BP. So a great utility card to be able to hit your energy requirements while also drawing new cards, which was a weakness of the deck previously. And of course we are playing the Toshiros to be able to play our Toshiro raid, and this is a great control card. It allows us to sticky rest or freeze our opponent's cards until the end of their next attack phase, and it also hits their backline if you have 6 other affinity cards on your field. And one of the other new cards is the 1 cost 1 action point Shinji. That is a 13 core guard squad, and it says when played, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, place them on the top or bottom of your deck in any order, and this card has a draw trigger with 2000 BP. So while this card is not very flashy on its own, it's a great consistency piece to allow us to filter through our deck so that we can ramp up and curve accordingly in the early game. And it's definitely a plus that this card has a draw trigger, and we will also be playing the 2 cost 1 action point Shunsui. That is also an affinity card for the deck, and says when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 affinity card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. This card also has a draw trigger with 3000 BP. So this card is pretty good in this deck since it allows us to filter through our deck to search for our heavy hitter raid cards. And that was definitely a weakness that the deck previously had, because you would basically not do much if you weren't hitting your Toshiro or Kenpachi raids. And for our next deck, we have the other green deck, which is the Yamamoto / Yachiru deck. And we're going over the new additions that this card gets in the binder, and also a little bit of the synergies of the deck. So the new card that this deck gets is the 3 cost 1 action point Ukitake. That is a 13 core guard squad card that says if this character has a face down card under it, it gains 1 energy generation, and when played, you may place the top card of your deck face down under this character. So basically when this card is played, you effectively generate 2 energy right off the bat, which is great. But also activate main, switch to resting, place 1 face down card under this character into your sideline. If you do, it gains 2 energy generation until the end of the turn. So that on demand, you can actually make this card generate 3 energy for the turn, but it has to be on the next turn because this card needs to switch to resting. So this is really good if you need to ramp up to play some heavy costed cards. And also note that with the new rulings, you can look at the face down card if you're the controller of this card. And of course, we are playing our top end card, which is a 7 cost 1 action point Yamamoto. So this is a beast of a card since it starts with 5000 BP and has inherent impact 1. Also when played, choose any number of affinity cards on your energy line and move them to your front line. Also when attacking, all other affinity cards on your field gain 2000 BP until the end of the turn. So effectively, this card allows you to move up your little affinity cards and pump them up when this card attacks. So basically all your cards that are 2000 or higher become real threats since they will go up to 4000 at the minimum. So this is why we are playing a lot of step cards like our 3 cost 1 action point Sajin, because basically if your cards are moved up, but your opponent is able to knock out your Yamamoto via a special or an ability, you want to be able to put back your cards onto the back line so that they are not stranded onto the front line. So this is why we are playing the Sajin step and also the Rangiku step, since these cards can move back to the back line after they have been moved up via the Yamamoto. And also step is pretty good in the Kenshin meta because anytime you move your cards up, if your opponent is not attacking, you could just bring them back via the step mechanic. And our next big raid card is a 6 cost 1 action point Yachiru. So this is a great card to be able to benefit from all our ramp abilities because this allows you to gain back the tempo and card advantage when this card is raided. And for our next color, the purple color, we'll be looking at the Byakuya deck. So the new card that this deck gets is the 5 cost 1 action point Renji that has inherently nullify impact and starts at 4000 BP with an active trigger and says activate main. You can only activate this ability if there is a character with a BP less than its base BP on your opponent's front line. Switch this character to active. You can only activate this Renji ability 1 time each turn. So the last phrasing states that this ability is a hard once per turn, so you can only do it for 1 copy of the Renji no matter how many you have played this turn. So of course this ability works well very much in a BP reducing deck, and we'll be looking at cards that help synergize with this ability. So this includes of course our 2 cost 1 action point Byakuya that says when played, choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line, it loses 1000 BP until the end of the turn. And also we are playing our 3 cost 1 action point Byakuya that says when played, choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line, it loses 500 BP until the end of the turn. So both of these cards allow us to fulfill the requirement for our Renji to turn it active. And of course, our Raid Byakuya, which is the 5 energy 1 action point 1, has tons of BP reducing abilities that synergize well with the point of our deck. So note that if you're able to put 2 of these guys on the field, you can actually AoE BP minus 2000 on the whole board. So if your opponent just has a bunch of small guys, you can effectively nuke their whole board with 2 Raid Byakuyas. And one of the new cards that helps this deck a lot is the 1 cost 1 action point Byakuya that says when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, place up to 1 of them into your sideline, then place the remaining cards on the top of your deck in any order, and this card has an active trigger with 2000 BP. So this card pretty much does everything that the deck was lacking. It fuels your sideline while also filtering to be able to get to your raids faster, while also being a raid target himself. So for the blue color, we'll be looking at the blue Rukia deck. So the point of this deck is to play Rukia that perma-freezes an opponent's card if you have a 2 AP card on your field, and you have a bunch of cards like the 4 cost 2 action point Byakuya and the 3 cost 2 action point Renji that synergize well with the whole mechanic. So the deck only gets 1 new card, which is the 1 cost 1 action point Rukia, and this card is basically a searcher for any character that you would want in the deck because it says when played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Ichigo, Renji, Rukia, or Byakuya card among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. And this card has a draw trigger with 2000 BP. And then for our next blue deck, it is the blue Ichigo deck. So the point of this deck is to get down your Raid Ichigo, and by discarding cards, you will both power it up and also fuel the synergies for cards that you have discarded. And the new card that this card gets is the 3 cost 1 action point Ichigo. This card has double block and also says during your turn, if you have placed a card from your hand into your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP to 4000 from 3000 BP, and this card has an active trigger himself, and also notably generates 2 energy. So this card pretty much does everything that you would want, since when you play this card in the front line, it will more than likely have 4000 BP for only 3 energy, and if you're in a pickle, you can also use it to generate 2 energy to be able to play your raided Ichigo. And the double block is pretty strong because you're playing a lot of active triggers, so if you hit an active trigger on your opponent's turn, this card effectively can block 2 characters while having 6000 BP. And then for our other blue deck, we have the hybrid deck, and this mixes both the Ichigo and Rukia cards together if you want to play a hybrid version of them. And the only big difference versus the non-hybrid Ichigo deck is that we are replacing the Ukitake with the Rukia, since the Rukia can search for more cards in this deck, since it allows you to search for both the Renji, Ichigo, and Rukia. And then for our last blue deck, we'll be looking at the Mayuri deck. So this deck in its original form didn't actually have 50 cards that fulfilled its affinities, so it's really good that it gained an extra card. So the point of this deck is basically to spam out some small guys, and they all get pumped via your site or your Mayuris. So we are getting a new Mayuri. This is a 1 cost 1 action point that says when play, choose one of the following, choose up to one other character on your field. It gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. Or choose up to one other character on your field. It gains 3000 BP. And at the end of this character's attack, sideline it until the end of the turn. And this card has an active trigger with 1500 BP. So this card is very good since it allows you to do what the deck is supposed to do, which is to pump up your small guys to get them over certain thresholds. But notably, the second effect, to be able to pump up a character by 3000, is really good since you can use the 4 cost 1 action point Mayuri, which allows you to pop one of your affinity cards, and depending on the BP of that card, allows you to sideline an opposing card with equal or less BP than the card you sidelined yourself. Alright, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more videos.